Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Odd Tandem special bonus features that we're including now. We took on board a lot of your feedback after our old podcast, and you guys wanted to hear us answer some questions and talk a little bit more between ourselves. So, Jensi, we got the mailbag feature. You ready for it?
I am. Can't wait to actually see what, our listeners and our fans and folks out there presenting us for questions.
So for the first time ever on camera, we have our producer, Mark Payne, who is going to do the honors of reading the questions and then maybe drift a little bit into the background and let Jens and I answer them as best we can. So hopefully these are good questions. We have not pre-read them. Mark has put them on some little note cards and hasn't shared them with us. So it'll be open and honest and totally fun. Right, Jensi?
Absolutely. I'm ready.
Okay, so remember, this will be a regular feature. So if you want to get a message, just drop us a message on any of the Odd Tandem social media pages, which is something that John Richards did. He asks, Mads Pedersen doesn't do altitude camp, but he kicks ass in sprints and is solid in the mountains. Is his approach viable for other top riders?
Ooh, I'll take that one. I mean, altitude training is not for everyone, no doubt. And I would say for sprinters, even less so. But, Mads is just a freak of nature, to tell you the truth, Jensi. I mean, he trains well, and then he can get into the mountains and he does his work, and then he pulls the pin and tries to recover as much as possible for the next stage. But I've read where he doesn't like doing altitude training. Altitude training is kind of a lonely existence. You're up on top of a mountain, you're spending 2 or 3 weeks up there, which is the equivalent of a grand tour. And it's tough to focus. And for a guy that doesn't really feel that that's benefiting him, he's going to have a hard time mentally. Jensi, I know that you came up with me and stayed with me in Lake Tahoe a couple times for altitude training. What's your take on altitude training? Did you feel a benefit from it?
We did a series of altitude training camps with the German national team back in the days as an amateur. Actually, we stayed in Colorado Springs and we had breakfast and lunch at the OTC, at the Olympic Training Center. We had a Holiday Inn hotel, I believe, but we had dinner and breakfast at the OTC. I didn't feel it had the biggest benefit on me, but we had other German riders like Michael Rich and Uwe Peschel, both, I think, at least won once a silver or bronze medal in the individual time trial, and they won the Olympics in the 100-kilometer teams time trial in Barcelona. They loved it. They felt the benefit from it. For me, not so much. And from my non-science amateur understanding, the air is thinner in altitude. That's why you're rolling faster with the same power output, and you lose muscle mass because your body goes, I don't need all these muscles anymore because I move faster, because the air is thinner. And muscle mass loss is the last thing you want if you're a sprinter. So maybe that might be a reason why he doesn't like, or he doesn't feel they help him so much, because he might losing muscle mass and therefore losing the explosive power for the sprint.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think altitude training has become a little bit more scientific, where you sleep high, train low. So you can still sleep at high altitudes and then go down and train basically at sea level, like in Tenerife, Sierra Nevada, Isla 2000. Because, yes, you're right. I'm not going to get into the total weeds here, but it's actually the partial pressure in your lungs that change. So you're actually, you are losing muscle mass, and you are more dependent on carbohydrates when you're living and training hard at altitude. So, staying at Colorado Springs, that's one one type of altitude training, but, staying on the top of a volcano or a mountain or one of those hyperbaric hotel rooms gives you a little bit different, more specific training adaptations, where you can still work those different altitude bands up high, but then you can get your really hard work, your FRC work, your VO2 work down at sea level where you have more oxygen, and then just ride back up and recover at altitude to get that overall adaptation. But I loved altitude. I was from altitude. I've done a lot of camps and really felt a benefit, but it was always hard once you came down from altitude. You needed 3 to 5 days to really feel like you weren't stuck in the proverbial mud, because you did lose some muscle mass, and then when you got down to sea level, when it was pushing more resistance, it definitely felt like you needed to build that muscle back up, and it comes back pretty quickly, actually.
Okay, so next question. This is sort of something that came up briefly in our conversation with Sean Quinn. What are the top 3 things that can be done to improve safety in the peloton? That's from Ken Stein.
Ooh, I'll let you take this one here, Jensi.
Alrighty. Less vehicles on the road. More technology, more drones. Have a drone instead of like motorbikes. So there's more space for the riders. It might be unpopular, but I think circuit races would be safer. It is easier and cheaper to remove every traffic island on that circuit. It's cheaper for TV to produce pictures from a closed circuit. You could even have a double fence and charge a little bit of an entrance fee on a closed circuit. And the riders would know the road because you do it several times. So that would be another way to improve security. But cycling in our tradition is from point A or city A to city B. So I'm not sure if there's an option, but in theory, it could work. Maybe tell the riders to show more respect for each other. Give a little bit of space and don't have this attitude, hey, either we both crash or you gonna break because I'm not gonna break. So change that attitude for the riders. Maybe sometimes have the peloton do an useless extra little lap, like a circle. And when they are out on a little circle, the entire caravan can pass. So they don't have to pass the peloton. They pass the empty road because the peloton is on a little extra loop next to the road. So then they don't get on the same road, and that makes it easier and safer for the police motorbikes, for the cars of the team soigneurs. They pass after the feed zone, for example, mechanics, they might want to pass. VIP guests, they want to pass. So that 50 cars can pass through without even seeing or touching a rider. That would be another way. Apart from that, it is a very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, let's face it. Cycling is a dangerous sport. Road furniture is popping up more and more for traffic control because we are on open roads. I know that the sport is doing as much as they can, but the one thing that I would really like to see change is the run-ins to the finish line, and especially at least the final 500 meters. We're seeing some sprints like around a corner, and then, you can't even see the finish line. And then right after the finish line, it's a T intersection and riders have to go left and right. And then there's, photographers and soigneurs standing there. It's been like this for forever. And I think the attitude of the rider, Jensi, I have to totally agree with what you said, is, the respect in the peloton has to come back. It's not all or nothing to get to that turn first, but it's some of the, it's the social media, it's the streaming, everybody sees what that rider did or did not do much more than when you and I were racing. So they feel obligated, like, I don't want this video to show that I didn't do my job. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. And, like Sean said, you have 25 teams listening to the same instructions, and it's just not safe. I definitely agree. We need to limit the amount of motorcycles and cars in the peloton. I don't know if you ever had to do it, Yenzi, but when I retired and became a race coach and kind of second DS, passing that peloton was terrible. I don't think, we go to the UCI, we take the UCI course, we learn how to pass the peloton. But these days, I mean, with the roads so narrow, so many people on the side of the road, the riders 5, 6, 10 abreast sometimes, it's super dangerous. So if we can limit the amount of traffic of excess vehicles, I think that would help. But overall, we just have to realize that, the road infrastructure is probably going to get more and more rather than less and less. And yes, our sport is from point A to point B. That's why they call it the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, the Vuelta de España. Is you want to see the whole country. The country wants to show off, all of its little different provinces and stuff like that. Doing circuit races all the time or criteriums or laps, I think is great for TV, but it takes a little bit away from the sport. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any really easy answer out there. And if there was, I think we would have found it already.
Well, here's one, an easy one, which is going to make you smile. The race should only happen if the race organizer, the UCI commissaire, and the main sponsor would send their own child down that road. If they go, yeah, I would send my daughter, my son down there in the peloton, then we can do it. If they would go, no, I don't want my child to race on this road, then we shouldn't race on it. Pretty simple. I know it will never happen, but I like the simple solutions.
But, we want to see shorter races. We want to see more action. Those days of, 5 or 6 days in a row in the Tour de France, ending in bunch sprints, riding at 30K an hour into the last hour. That's over. So I think the riders need to be able to adapt and give a little bit more space to each other, not so cutthroat, and have these finishes, especially the finishes, be a little bit more straightforward. But, they always want to finish in the middle of the town or, in front of a sponsor building, and that's difficult. But, taking out some of that road furniture, for the grand tours, they do a pretty good job of that. But for the smaller tours, you see guys, having to dodge, road furniture in the last kilometer. And that's just, unfortunately, I don't see that changing. It has to come from the riders and the respect they have for each other.
Okay. Another question here, sort of following on again from Sean. Ellie Avelia on Facebook said, there seems to be a lot more American pros at the moment, more than in recent memory. Is there any specific reason for this? I love the international aspect of the sport, but it's also nice to see more talented American riders as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We're seeing a real rejuvenation of American riders in the pro peloton. And they all have their different way of getting there. I think one of the common denominators are these development teams like Action, like the old Lux team. It's given riders a little bit more of a practice couple years, in that under 23 category so that they can go over there. They've been in Europe. They've maybe learned the language already. It's unfortunately not coming from the race calendar over here in America. We have a lot of gravel events, quite a few criteriums, and very, very few stage races. So I think the American riders in the peloton right now are spoiling us with the amazing results that they're having. But when you look at the population of our country, we should actually have even more. I know that USA Cycling is doing as good as they can, but the budget just isn't there to get these kids over to Europe. School comes into account. A lot of these riders are being forced to go online to finish their schooling so that they can get over and exposed to European racing. But we are definitely in a purple patch with so many Americans, fighting for wins, not only in Grand Tours, but classics and 1 week stage races. So for me as a fan, especially of American cycling, it's been fun to watch.
And I believe it comes and goes in waves. For a while, it felt like half of the peloton are Australians. They're still there, they're still good. But we have not only quite a few Americans, but also really good ones, like Bobby talked about it already. Really good ones, so they make it easy to see them, to notice them. And we had times where it felt like Tyler Farras, the only leftover American cyclist for 1 or 2 years. There were not so many for a certain period of time. But now, yeah, it is good, and we hope it keeps going like that for a while. But yeah, it just comes and goes in waves.
Okay, here's one that you might have answered in the past, but it's an interesting one. James Holloway asks, what was the hardest day on the bike in your professional career related to the weather? Hot or cold, rain, sleet or snow?
For me, that's easy. You can think about it for a minute, Bobby. For me, it's easy. It's got to be Tour of California when it was still in February, and we had a 220 kilometer stage. That is 160 miles, maybe 165 miles, down the Pacific Coast Highway. It finished in San Luis Obispo, I believe. 220 kilometers, straight down south, straight full-on headwind. My team back in the days, Team CSC, we were chasing the front group in the small chain ring 16, 17. So we were doing basically 23 miles an hour, chasing full gas the breakaway. That much headwind. And it was raining all the time, about 4 degrees, whatever that is in the funny Fahrenheit things you do over there. It took me 2 or 3 days to actually feel my fingertips again. They were numb for at least 2 days. And funny enough, I know for a fact that Cadel Evans was there. He would mention that day as well. There's a few of us. They would mention exactly this day, Tour of California, that long stage in the headwind, in the rain. It was just horrible.
I was there with you as well. I remember that stage very well. So I'm not going to say the same, even though, yes, that's one of them. One of the most miserable stages for me that I remember was in the Tour de France. I believe it was in 2001. It was the day that it was very, very cold. That was the day the breakaway with Kivilev went up the road and got like 20 minutes or so. And we were freezing. And I had a battle kit bag. In my rain bag, I had like this Pearl Izumi rain jacket, which I only pulled out if I absolutely needed it to survive. And remember, we're in the Tour de France, and this Pearl Izumi rain jacket was yellow. So I went back and put it on, and I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm going to be able to survive. I'm going to be able to get through this. And then I got pulled back by our team car saying, you cannot wear that color rain jacket because it's yellow. And I told him, I said, I am not taking this thing off. And we were on Credit Agricole at that time, so we had green. So I took a green vest and put it over that yellow rain jacket, and actually made it worse because when you're cold and then you put too many layers on, you get frozen from the inside out, not only the outside in. And I remember trying to finish that stage, and it seemed like we had 50K to go and everyone's freezing, and the breakaway was, didn't they finish 20 or 25 minutes ahead of us that year? It was insane. So there was no impetus, there was no mental motivation on top of that. All you could think about was how cold you were. So definitely number right up there with one of the worst days on the bike, not only physically but mentally having to struggle through the cold.
I have a little short add-on. One stage in the Basque country, and it was so cold that I stopped in the feed zone, and my soigneur came running at me. Hey Jens, what happened? You want to? I'm like my teeth are like shaking. I'm like, no, I can't move. You got to put that rain jacket and my gloves on me. I can't move. So I had two people putting a rain jacket on me and my gloves over my fingers. And then I kept riding. They said, hey, you want to abandon? I'm like, no, but I cannot move. Help me get on my rain clothes. It was just awful. Next question, please.
Right, this is a message from Jay Kinsman. He says, I would love to hear some specifics about how a stage is prepared for a Grand Tour race. How many people are involved in going over the lengthy Corso for a given day? Who decides what barriers are put up? Is there a vehicle that goes out an hour in advance to look for new safety issues that might have arisen, such as debris on the road, etc.? Are street sweeping machines used to clear a good path of the stage?
I have no idea. We kind of take that for granted, don't we, Yenzi? You don't think about, all the work that goes into setting up a stage of the Grand Tour. We just complain when one barrier is out of place or one turn isn't marked. I can't imagine the armada of people that it would take not only to design the course, but then go out and preview the course, sign the course, barricade the course. Then you have to take into account the KOM banners, the sprint banners, the finish banners. I think it's a small city that it would take to prepare a stage of the Grand Tour. But as far as the specifics, that's way out of my wheelhouse.
I believe the Tour de France, being the biggest race, they ask for 3,500 beds per night. So they move about 3,500 people each day. Only 1,500 roughly of them are journalists, from the little blogger to whatever, GCN, NBC or Eurosport. So 1,500 journalists, print media, radio, and I believe there's got to be an easy 200 people in the public caravan. They start an hour before the bike race to throw out little cookies and little Haribos to the fans. Sometimes they put up barriers on the last climb, like 5 kilometers, the last 5 kilometers on each side. That's 10 kilometers of barriers. There's a special troop of that. They have these, I wouldn't call them buses, kind of like trucks. And they have in 3 layers above each other, a little sleeping. Basically, it's like the size of a refrigerator where they sleep in. And then you have the little small tiny window, 3 on top of each other and like 10 lines deep. So it's like some 30 people sleeping in that truck all day long like vampires. They come out in the afternoon to break down the barriers, drive overnight to the next finish and start at midnight, at 2 a.m., at 1 a.m. to rebuild the city, the finish structure. And then at about 6, 7, 8 a.m. they're finished. They go to sleep in their little truck, sleep all day again, and do that for 3 weeks. These guys are heroes. So there is a lot of people, a lot of different jobs. I believe as the big boss in the morning, you just call your little lieutenants. Did you do your job? Did you do your job? Did you do your job? And they call their little sergeants. And the sergeants call the soldiers if they did the job. So I think it's like a pyramid. But it's impossible for one person to control all of it, I guess. You got to have a bunch of competent people around you to make everything happen. But yeah, it is the biggest circus in the world, in other words.
And one group of people that we almost forgot about were all the gendarmes. The guys on the motorcycles. I mean, the fleet of gendarmes that protect the riders. I mean, those guys travel for most of the tour as well. I mean, it is an absolute logistical nightmare. And we should probably take this time to thank those people for doing all that, because they probably never get thanked or rewarded. They only get yelled at when something goes wrong.
Yeah, following on from that, you said the gendarmes. The Tour de France, for example, there are 28,000 gendarmes at that race, just that race, that follow it all the way through. And you didn't mention my favorite group of people, which are the people who go along and make sure that the graffiti on the road is TV safe. So there are literally a team of people that go along with a little graffiti gun and they alter all the cocks that people draw on the road and turn them into flowers and butterflies. It's amazing. But
yep,
anyway,
they do have a team that controls what's written on the roads. If it's too rough, they just painted over or changed the words a little bit so it wouldn't be that harsh.
See, I've never heard of that. So, how far ahead of the race are they? Because you can imagine, if the race caravan goes through and somebody sees it, they can paint over it. But like, what's to keep them from painting over it like 10 minutes? Painting something, deflammatory 5 minutes before the peloton gets there. Like, where are these masked graffiti specialists? Whereabouts are they?
I believe they are as close as they can to the head of the race, because what they want is to hear the helicopter. They know if the helicopter comes, the TV helicopter with the camera, they need to have everything repainted before the helicopter is there. So they never go further than they probably could hear the helicopter. So then there's very little time between them safely overpainting and the helicopter showing the perfect view of whatever is written on the streets.
I learn something every day. I had no idea that there was somebody whose job that was.
Amazing. This will be the last question, I think, today. It's from David Burkett via Twitter, and he said, I'd love to know what Bobby and Jens felt like after riding a Tour de France Queen stage. I've done long rides in the mountains that leave with a headache, and being so tired I can't sleep. Is it like that? How do they ride the next day? Do you guys still feel the feelings and sensations are the same in these days of shorter races?
Ooh, I mean, that's two different scenarios. When you're at the pointy end of the race, you get done with the race and you're just rip-roaring ready to go the next day. There's other days that you finish in the gruppetto and you hobble back to your room and, just fall into your bed and hope that you don't have to wake up. But that's the sensations of finishing a Queen stage depend totally on your results, on your team's results. If you did your job and your leader did well, the morale is great. But if your leader failed, or if your whole team finished in the gruppetto with yourself, it's a pretty dreary moment. I remember one year specifically finishing when I was racing for Team Telecom. I think we finished up in Courchevel, and I was finishing in the gruppetto, get to the finish line. There's not much. I think there was one soigneur there, and he's just like, yeah, you go down the road a little bit and you'll see our hotel, which is, as you know, Yenzi, and you remember, those were the worst directions ever. Like, you can't miss it. Like, yes, I'm totally hypoglycemic right now. I cannot wait to get off this bicycle. I'm going to miss it. And of course I did. But he gave me a hat and a water bottle. And when I got to the turn of what I thought was my hotel, I saw one of those sausage stands, sausage and frit vendor. And I stopped there and I said, man, I just need to wolf down one of these greasy sausages, something for my morale, because I'm so just over this race. And I asked him for a sausage and couldn't really communicate with him very well at that time. So I took off my cap and my water bottle and kind of signed him, 2 sausages for this. And he said 1. And that was fine. And I tell you, that was the best sausage I ever ate in my life.
Like you just said, Bobby, experiences are so different, right? If the leader does well, whatever, your teammate takes a jersey or stage win, you're happy and things seem to be easier. I remember one day I was on a break. I had to work so hard, and then on the last climb up to the Plateau de Bay, my team boss Björn Ries came up and said, hey, look, he is not feeling well. He crashed. He is out. You're our third guy for the team, GC. You got to go full gas. But I had nothing left. So I worked as hard as I could to get up there. And I remember I just collapsed into the team car and said, okay, make it happen. But I'm not moving from here. I sit here until I see the hotel. Whatever you need to do, do it. But I'm not moving anywhere at all out of this car anymore. And I had my recovery drink and I sat there and said, whatever. Sell my bike, whatever, but I'm not getting out of this car. And, they drove me to the hotel because I was so empty. But there's always light at the end of the tunnel, right? And that's something you have to remember when you're in a race, in a big race. Everybody hits the wall at least once in a Grand Tour. You got to have teammates to help you out of that hole. And there's always tomorrow. You somehow always can go again the next day. Never lose faith. It's never over. But yeah, we had some hard moments as well, right?
Jensi, we were teammates for a long time. I had a lot of other teammates over my career, but man, I never saw anyone that would be glued to their bed, absolutely just shattered. Because I would wake up and go down and have breakfast a little bit earlier, and I'd look over and you would just be a mess. And I would be coming up from breakfast and you'd just be going down kind of in a panic, the last person to eat. And then somehow you went from being that comatose cadaver on the bed to becoming all of a sudden, when the bell rang, you were just right back on it. It blew me away. There were so many times where I was like, guys, Jens is dead. Like, he's done. And then you were the first one in the breakaway every day. That used to crack me. How could somebody be that tired and that just bloodshot eyes, sweaty, puffy face, and then get into the race and be the first in the breakaway? So I do not miss those days, Jensi. Not one moment.
At all. Yep, not at all. Alrighty, my folks, that's it for our first episode, Mailbag episode, right?
Yeah, keep them coming. We're gonna try this out. We're a new podcast funded by our listeners and sponsors. So we're gonna roll with this and see how it goes. And I hope you guys enjoy it. And please don't hesitate to subscribe to our Patreon page. And if you do have any sponsorship ideas out there, please send them our way. And thank you for listening to The Odd Tandem.